Welcome back for another episode of Full Steam Ahead, where we discuss all things STEM, but with a twist of art. Our goal is to encourage the next generation of STEM leaders, bring our experiences to life, and encourage you to reach your full potential. The reason why I wanted to touch on toxic personality and toxic masculinity is because I feel like it's so prevalent in today's society. Actually, it's been prevalent always, but with technology, with the different ways that you interact with people, the way that things develop, things change. And so I definitely feel like in the workplace is one of the most prevalent ways that you might see it, no matter what industry you're in, whether you are a professor, whether you work at a Fortune 500 company, whether you work in a lab, whether you work at a manufacturing plant, it can all still be experienced the same. So I'll share an experience that I had. So at one of my previous employers, I had a not so pleasant experience a couple of times. This is more so on just the general toxic personality side. So one time, I was filling out a document. Sometimes you have to do what's called an RFI, which is a request for information. You're trying to help your client out. You ask them, hey, I need you to help me. So you have to give them all these different things, where your project is, what the name of it is, what you're looking for, what you expect to possibly get back. You tell them all this information. You give them a little map, show them all this stuff. So I completed this request, right? And at this time, I wasn't fully up to speed. There were people checking my work and things of that nature. So I gave something to someone to check. They looked at it and they were like, oh, cool. Everything seems like it's good. And I was like, all right, bet. And they were like, I'm used to most of your stuff being wrong. What? Like, what? Like, why are you coming at me like that? And then they laughed. Like, so that's one backhanded ass comment. And I'm sometimes not always the best at responding at the jump like that, because most times when I do respond on the jump, I respond and I have negative consequences, right? That's just that just happens. And so I think at that moment, God was really helping me out. He was like, bro, I'm not gonna let you respond at this moment. I'm gonna just let it add up. So that was one experience. I was just like, why would you say that to somebody? Why would you say that to somebody that you're working with, that you're on a team with? And then another individual on that same team, just really aggressive with everything. So one time, around this time I had gotten into a car accident, car totaled. And so I was like, I went to go get checked out, went to the ER. First response was, those ER places are popping up everywhere. And I'm like, okay, it's not my problem. I didn't make them. Why are you upset about this? Well, ever since Obama was in office, they're popping up everywhere. And then his tone changed. So he was like, but now that Trump's in office, his voice got nicer. They're starting to die down some. And I was so confused. I was like, okay, so you asked me, I told you I went to the ER, and then you got mad because I went to the ER, or you got mad because people have the option to go to the ER. What's your problem with that? I just feel like he was way too aggressive in that situation. Like, bro, calm down, take a chill pill. Like, what are you upset about? It just didn't make any sense. And from that point on, I pretty much knew that this individual was going to be some sort of toxic, or I was going to need to keep my eye on him. Before we jump into a little bit more, I do want to somewhat define what these terms mean, because a lot of times you get different terms and people just throw them around. They don't know what they mean. They're using them improperly. So psychotherapist Jody Gale has said that, commenting on someone on a toxic personality, psychotherapist Jody Gale says, often the person is deeply wounded, and for whatever reason, they are not yet able to take responsibility for their wounding. their feelings, their needs, and their subsequent problems in life. So that makes sense. On the toxic masculinity side of things, a study in the Journal of School of Psychology defines toxic masculinity as the constellation of socially regressive and, in brackets, masculine traits that serve to foster domination, the devaluation of women, homophobia, and wanton violence. In modern society, people often use the term toxic masculinity to describe exaggerated masculine traits that many cultures have widely accepted or glorified. So, with that said, that's just a little bit of a definition of where toxic masculinity, the term, comes from, why it may happen. I'll let you all, talk about some bad run-ins you may have had with someone that had a toxic personality, or maybe too toxic on the masculine side of things,
I'll go ahead
or maybe even where you might have been toxically masculine, or
okay,
a toxic person in general, since Sabril is not a male.
I'll tell a story. This is one of my a friend of mine who's a pharmacist. So like just in general, like people that when we work in the hospital, we kind of work like on a team. So like the doctors doing things, but you have the nurses at the bedside who work with the patients all the time. The techs that are coming by taking vitals, people that come by taking blood. You have like case managers, social workers, the pharmacists who like help a lot with medications, make sure we don't mess up stuff. And I had a friend who was a pharmacist for like one of the teams, message or like send an email to one of the doctors on the team because he was supposed to. There were some tasks he was supposed to complete as a part of like the patient care, like a part of the protocol. And so she sends him an email and says like hello with an exclamation mark, and says like please do XYZ, and also please send this to whomever. Thank you. And she's a woman, and the doctor that she sent the email to was a man, and she gets her boss, like, or her supervisor, notifies her and says like, hey, this doctor said you like messaged him and you were being very aggressive at how you came at him and was telling him to do things rather than like asking. And I just got so, like, when I heard about that, I got so upset. I'm like we're on a team to like do things, and like everyone has responsibilities. Like I feel like there's like this power dynamic. There is a power dynamic, one, and then there's like a gender dynamic too, maybe in reverse order. But that I feel, it's all conjecture. We don't know what was in the person's head, but like I feel like someone shouldn't have to ask you to like do your job, like. And it wasn't like she was curt about anything. She used an exclamation mark at the beginning. She said please both times, but it's like it's something you're supposed to do. So just do it. And I feel like had it been a male that was messaging him, it may not have been an issue. And then, like I said, there's also the whole dynamic with like doctors having this complex anyway about like not being told what to do. But I don't know, it just made me so mad. I don't think you should have to do that. Like you shouldn't have to. Y'all are equals. They don't have to like talk to you a certain way. It just really frustrated me because I see that a lot in my field with doctors and other doctors, or doctors and residents, or doctors and nurses, and this is not cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're saying you feel like the doctor was basically telling was it a nurse?
No. It was a doctor and a pharmacist, and the
pharmacist was female.
Yeah. So she's a woman.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the doctor was being too sensitive or asking for too much, basically.
Yeah, to say like
was just him doing his job.
Yeah, like you don't. Yes, like all she was doing, and it was something. The thing that she was asking him to do was something that he helped develop, like a protocol that he developed. So, like, hey, I've done my part. This is the next step in the process. Like, please do this. So.
Yeah, I feel that's crazy. That's ego. That is all ego.
It is, and
right there.
And I see that like doctors are like that just I shouldn't say
know.
all. I
I
shouldn't say all
know.
doctors, obviously, but
Well, yeah, we know
yeah, but
there's exceptions. But in general, like when you have like a prestigious title like that, people do treat you differently. People, regard the medical field and those types of professions like differently. So people do have certain airs about themselves. Um, Luckily, my friends in the medical or people that I call friends who are in these types of positions, they aren't like that. But I've come across like quite a few who are just persnickety.
yeah, it's like you're a person. Like, yeah, okay, you went to school for whatever for however long. Like, okay, like you're good at what you do, or you had to go through a lot to get there, and there's a level of respect, but it's a level of respect because you're a person, not because you have a title.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's ego when you're
Yeah, I
defined
think.
by your titles.
Yeah, I definitely feel like ego is one of the biggest components of toxic masculinity or a toxic personality in general, and a lot of, and I think that comes from basically people latching on to titles and latching on to things, so once you start to, and again that goes back to the point where Jody Gale said that that person is wounded, so that person might feel like they don't have anything else but their title, so they latch onto that. So you latch onto that title, or they latch onto that title. You don't latch onto it the way that they think you should. You've offended them now, and now they're gonna make you pay for it. And everybody, who does something that they feel has offended them is gonna pay for it. And that's how you get in so many situations where you have whole departments that go to shit because there's one person that's the bad apple, and a lot of times that one bad person could be the department head or the person leading. And once your leader is bad, then you've pretty much just set the tone for the rest of the department, the company, etc. Because I know one of my previous employers, it was just before I got there, that department head, I just heard things were just completely crazy. Like everybody was on edge. Nobody wanted to be around him, and he didn't care about anybody. He did whatever he wanted to basically lift himself up. And now he's the department. He's the like I want to say the president of a whole separate region. It's like
It's crazy.
you get promoted for doing bad, and
I
that
Or
change
think
just
it,
keeps going.
that
I
that's a
think
good
it's more than
like
that.
that may serve them for a while, but I feel like that type of culture and that environment is not sustainable, and they will eventually see a lot of turnover related to whomever you're talking about if they are behaving in that manner.
Right. Exactly.
Well, your story, Taylor, kind of reminded me of a story I have. It's not necessarily toxic masculinity, but it was definitely a toxic situation. So I used to be a pharmacy technician when I was in undergrad, and I was working at this store in an urban area, a pharmacy in an urban area, and then I switched to somewhere kind of like more midtown where it was like more of like a mixed clientele. And months after I left the pharmacy in the urban area, I had learned that one of my old coworkers there had been like busted for like stealing, scheduled drugs or whatever. Like it was like this crazy thing because like with lore tabs or anything that's like scheduled, at least for us in that pharmacy, we had to count them to make sure that like no one was stealing them and the counts weren't off, whatever. And so there's like this huge like controversy over like thousands being missing. Well, turns out it was one of the employees, but she like quit before they found out like who it was or whatever. I don't know what ever happened to that, but yeah, she ended up stealing like a whole bottle of like lure tabs. It was crazy. But I was already gone. I had been at a different location. And so, you know, different stores need different they have like a set amount of hours. Some teams have enough help, some teams don't. And so it's not uncommon for us to kind of like travel around between stores. Like if we want some extra hours we can pick up, there's always like a store that needs an extra hand. So our store needed an extra hand at the time. And there was a girl from a different location. She came and she was helping us out. And she had helped us out for like a couple weeks or whatever. Well, she ends up telling my coworker that the reason why I was there was because I was in, and we had to, let me back up. We didn't have to count our scheduled narcotics before because we didn't have any problems. But all of a sudden, I don't know, they just implemented like this new rule that we had to start counting our narcotics. So, and it was around the time where she came. Well, she ended up telling my coworker that the reason why we now had to start counting our narcotics was because of me, because I was the girl who was at the urban location stealing the scheduled narcotics. And luckily, because I didn't really have a good relationship with my coworker at the time who told me. I thought she was super lazy, but that's no here nor there. But luckily she told me, and I will admit I did not handle it very well, but I was super upset because one, you're new here. This isn't even like your store. One.
She doesn't even go here.
Yeah, like you don't even go to school here. Like, yeah, exactly. But two, like, why would you, like, are you trying to like get me fired? Like, what's the point of like spreading that rumor? And three, like, you have the wrong information. Like, you have the wrong information. And what was it, just because I'm black and I'm from an urban store? I don't know if race played a part, but sometimes I speculate that it does, because I was the only black girl there at the store. It's not a lot of us. And so yeah, I was just like really taken aback. So like when I found that out, I found out her schedule when she would be working next, and I went to the store and I slammed down on the counter and I was like, huh? Yeah, no, definitely. And I went up to the counter. I was standing in line like I was a customer. And when it got to me, I was like, we need to talk, because what you're not gonna do is go around saying that I was the one who stole all those Schedule II narcotics or whatever. Like, it was not me. And so like the store manager was like right there, and he was like, okay, we need to take this into the office or whatever. And so like we went into the office and like we were talking about it, and she was like, oh, I didn't mean any harm. I'm like, what do you mean you didn't mean any harm? You're accusing me of literally a whole crime. And I was like, that happened. I've been gone from that for months. Like, I haven't even been at that store for months. So you don't even have your facts straight. And if you're going to accuse somebody of a crime like that, like, and luckily, like, the store manager had my back. He was like, yeah, that's a really serious, like, thing to accuse somebody of. Like, she could have lost her job, like, if we had, taken that seriously or whatever. I was just so, like, upset. And, she was just like, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just like, girl, bye.
I can't stand when people like say stuff, like say shady things or like do shady things, and then like don't stand behind it, like their word. Like, they start backpedaling. Like, what do you mean you didn't mean? Like, what was your intent when you
what did you think
that?
Was going to happen?
What did you think was going to happen? Exactly.
Like, what?
Like,
yeah.
People are not honest with themselves, man. Or they just, or it's almost insulting. It's like, do you expect me to believe like this story here?
That's true.
So, question, Sabril, outside of that situation, do you feel like there were many more quote unquote toxic employees?
Oh yeah. The girl that I mentioned that was super lazy, like, that was a toxic situation, because we all had jobs to do, in the pharmacy to make sure everything was like running smoothly. And, we would rely on people. So like, if we have like, there's certain medications that we leave in the front, and if a customer doesn't come and pick them up after a certain amount of time, we have to put them back into inventory. And so that way it kind of keeps the bins clear. It also, like, keeps our inventory like, up to date and things like that. So we like rely on each other to like do our parts. That way everything is running smoothly. Well, like we had, my mind is going to Spanish. What is going on? We each had, it's not a chore. It's not a chore. What am I thinking of? It's not a chore. We each had a thing to do. A task. Thank you. A task. We each had a task to do, and we had a paper that we had to sign saying that we did it. Well, she would sign it and say she did it, but she didn't. And so, our counts are off with the medication. Like, people are saying,
I'm assuming that if accounts are off, then somebody's getting blamed for things not balancing out, and then it becomes like a he say she say, type of situation.
It's more like just kind of like tedious. So it's like it's only a big deal like that when it comes to like the scheduled narcotics. It's not really that big of a deal for like depression medication, for example. Yeah. So it just becomes tedious. So it's like, okay, if the lisinopril, if it says we have 90 in stock, but there's a 30-day sitting in the bin that someone hasn't picked up that we checked off and said that was put back, then we got to figure out how to make the count back at 120 or whatever. So it's like going through the bin. It just makes things harder, and it doesn't have to be that way if you would just do. And so like I was the senior pharmacy tech at the time, and so I would tell her, hey, like we need to do this, and she would be like, oh yeah, I did it, and like check it off or whatever, but she wouldn't. And so just over time you just get annoyed, and she like, it just builds tension, and yeah, it was just a toxic situation. And with the pharmacist thought that I was being like mean to her. And I was like, no, I'm not being mean. I'm just blunt. Like, she's not doing her work. She's not doing her job. And it wasn't until I left, which that pharmacist is still my friend to this day. And we reminisce about the time. She was like, yeah, no, you were right about that girl. She was this, she was that. And I didn't realize it until after I left. I was like, see, I told you. I do my job.
So basically, the lazy girl was somewhat creating a toxic environment. Like, did you ever dread going into work at times?
It depended on who was there. So if my friend, the pharmacist, was there, even if she was there, like it was cool because I had my friend who was a pharmacist. But if it was like maybe like a substitute pharmacist that's filling in and her, then yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I go in and do my job though. But I was also young and a lot more immature than I am now. So age also had a thing to do with it, because now I think I would have reacted differently. Now I'm less attached to these types of situations. Like my previous job, we had it was a toxic situation too, because the guy brought politics into everything, and me being the only Black person, let alone woman there was definitely some toxic energy going on there too. But it didn't bother me it didn't bother me as much as when I was in college as a pharmacy tech, that the girl not doing her job bothered me. Like I was much more bothered then than I was, but that's because I had grown.
Right.
So it was just like, okay, yeah, he's annoying, but I don't have to interact with him. I just do my job and go home. So I'm less attached to those.
Yeah,
I'm less
you've been
attached
able to separate
like that now. Yeah.
Okay.
And
yeah,
I realize it ain't got nothing to do with me. It's them.
I got you. Yeah. I know for me, I definitely, when you were saying that if it was a substitute and then it was the other lazy girl, you didn't want to go, but you would go and do your job. I know the exact feeling, because I would be more excited to go to work when there was less people there, or when most of my team wasn't there. That was the only times I was really like, okay, cool, I can do this. yeah, it was like, man, I don't, I would be counting my steps. I would get off the elevator and be like, all right, I got like 50 steps, and then I'm gonna be in there. I hope when I click when I pull my badge out, I hope when I try to get into the door, it doesn't work and the power's out or something. How do you? It's either sink or swim, and I feel like for a while I was sinking, but then I was able to get back swimming. So I wanted to ask y'all. So in any of your situations, what would you have done differently in terms of handling the toxicity, handling the personality? What would you have done?
Well, the situation I discussed it wasn't my situation. Um, but I think if, for instance, in that situation, if I was the supervisor, I would have a discussion with the person that's complaining. So I think this like customers always right type of attitude where like maybe the supervisor knows that like the person who has an issue is like actually the wrong, but they don't want to say anything. Like I feel like I feel like it's your job, especially if you're like you have people under you to like protect your direct reports or whatever they are, and and to say something, because I think that's how a lot of this culture gets perpetuated, is that like someone sees that something's wrong, but the person who's like has the power to speak against it or to like say something, they don't say anything because they, for whatever reason, like maybe it's motivated, they feel like they might lose their job, or they're just uncomfortable with conflict. There's a lot of factors that could cause that, but it's just saying something. Like if you see something, say something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Brill?
I say that I would have handled it differently knowing what I know now. But in hindsight, like if I could go back and change it, like I wouldn't.
I was like, I don't see the issue. Like,
I said what I
I
said.
mean, literally, like, I think just in general, like we have like this obsession with like perfection and righting our wrongs and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said earlier, like you can't have progression without regression, or you can't have evolution without devolving. Like there's a yin and a yang to it all. So in order for me to have gotten to this point, like I needed to be that. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything.
and it's like what would you do? Like again, these things get perpetuated because no one says anything. So like some like more mature people might say like, well, you should have like pulled this person to the side, and like sometimes people need to see ignorance, or not saying that you were ignorant in that situation, but like sometimes you have to like give people that same energy. That's the only time they listen.
Or that they need to see that.
Yeah, that's true.
I think a lot of people need to see that you're gonna bring it to their front step.
Right.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I mean, proceed with caution, but
Yeah.
sometimes you have to do
I
that.
Yeah, I do think that for her type of personality, because, there's just like some people are just like sneaky and conniving, like they do things like behind your back and they're just real petty. And she was that type of person to me. So for me, like I felt like I needed to be rah rah, like in your face, like this is how it is, for her type of personality. And I don't necessarily think it was the best approach, like from where I am now, but I give myself grace. Sabril at that time did not have the tools that she has now. Or Brill at the time, excuse me. Brill at the time did not have the tools that she has now. So, yeah.
I know for me, looking back, I would have acted sooner. But I feel like you said, you can't, you have to go through certain things to learn. And for me, I couldn't jump all the way out there before knowing all the information. A lot of the times, there was a lot of subtle things that were happening. It was a lot of subtle things, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, when we talk about what tips we can give people. But I wanted to read something I saw in Harvard Business Review. So it says that for managers, and I think one of the issues is that a lot of times people like you have managers and then you have leaders, right? And so I think in this situation, the managers are the leaders, or they should be the leaders, but but they're not really built like that. But anyway, Harvard Business Review says that managers should do the following when they notice that there's some sort of, toxic situation that falls within their department or, their group or whatever you may call it. So one is to dig deeper, figure out what's really happening. Why is that person being toxic? What's causing their behavior? Give them direct feedback. Talk to them, say, hey, I've noticed this, I've done that. Explain the consequences of their behavior. Tell them, this thing will happen and this is how it's affecting other people. You're bringing down the house. You're bringing down the department. Then it has accept that some people won't change. I think that's a very important step because people really not going to change that much. They just aren't. And then from there, that's when you really start taking, the managers should start taking the other steps. Document everything. Then next, isolate the toxic person. And then, and I feel like this last one more so focuses on not necessarily managers, but the people that have to work with them. Don't get distracted. So still come to work, still do you, still be you. Don't get distracted by that person's energy. That's easier said than done, but I think that's a very important point. So as we begin to wrap up, I want to know, what are 3 tips you would give someone about handling toxicity in the workplace? And maybe not just the workplace, any place. I know for me, mine's going to come from the workplace.
I would say in general, 3. I would say detach emotionally. Let go of things that you cannot control. And, let me think of the third one. I mean, y'all can go while I'm thinking of the third one.
We can come back.
I gotta think about this.
Okay, I can go while y'all are thinking.
Okay.
So these are actually steps that I used. Stay focused on your work. Keep doing what you're doing. That goes back to the don't get distracted part of things. Work on your projects. Work on the things that's being placed in front of you. Because at the end of the day, if you're with a company and you're supposed to be meeting certain metrics or doing certain things, working to certain goals, you still have to try to meet that, no matter what's going on with those other people. So you can, stay focused on doing you. Set up a meeting with your supervisor. Tell them, hey, I've noticed some uneasiness. When I'm around, there's different things that are said, there's different things that are done. I've noticed that this person is reacting to me in this manner. And if it's multiple people, get the whole, set up a meeting with your supervisor, try to set something up with the rest of the people on your team. And any supervisor that's not willing to do that is not a great supervisor to begin with. And then also you can talk with that person on the side and inform them that there's a better way to get their point across. As simple as that. Words are powerful. So, you don't have to just spout anything out. Someone doesn't have to say the most negative things when they could just say it in a more lightly or calm way. That's my 3.
Yeah,
That's good. I like that.
Trying to think of how I deal with toxicity. I think in general, my first question when I'm dealing with these types of things are do I have to deal with is this something that actually affects me? Do I have to interact with this person? Do I have to is this person a factor in my life or not? So sometimes I think we get distressed or stressed about things or people things that are going on that really doesn't affect you. If someone says they for instance, if you go into we have a lounge or whatever, and you go in there and someone's watching Fox News or something, that might make you mad because you feel like this person is supporting political parties that you don't support or whatever. Like, that's not something I feel like you have to like devote your energy to. Like, just leave, like just stay in your lane. But for people that you do have to interact with, I think you have to kind of decide like how much of an issue it is for you. So like you may just have to like directly like talk to this person. And I think the key to getting through like any like conflict is to address it, because otherwise you either, if you don't address it, it's going to fester and like cause resentment, or it's going to continue to affect you. Now that's just like generally speaking. If the person that you're dealing with that's toxic is like your boss, it obviously is like a different dynamic there, and it's more difficult to deal with. But in that same vein, I mean, if it's at work and it's your boss, I mean, you can try to have a conversation with them, and like James said, if they're not willing to have that conversation or not willing to address it, then like that may not be somewhere where you want to stay long term. And so then you may need to like start looking at other options. But in the meantime, still doing your job, because even though they might be creating that work environment for you, if you like start slacking on your job, that's something that they still can like document against you and saying like, well, you didn't do your job, and it's their word against yours. So still you do your job, but still like be working on your exit to somewhere that cultivates a better work environment.
Yeah,
Girl,
I agree too. Yeah, I guess my third one would kind of piggyback off of what you guys have said about being direct. I do think communication is key. Talking to them about it, and if it's like a boss or something like that, then see if there's somebody else, like maybe his supervisor or somebody else. Kind of reminds me of a situation that I had where my boss would not let me off, even though I had been robbed, like my house had been broken into. Like he didn't want me to he wanted me to use a vacation day for that because I had to take off. And so like I went around him and went to human resources, and they were like, no, we're gonna give you like a free day. And it was like, thank you for being understanding. And if there's somebody else that you can like talk to, then utilize those resources as well. But definitely be direct, but use common sense as well.
Nice. Well, that will wrap up our conversation on toxic personalities and toxic masculinity. We really hope that you're able to have some great takeaways on this. If you're affected by either of these situations, definitely try to apply the tips that we just gave. Use the situations that we talked about and get some motivation from that. Everybody goes through things in their life, at work, no matter what field you're in. You can apply what we've discussed today to that. So we thank you for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you on another episode. You can catch us at full_steam_ahead on Instagram. And you can catch me on Instagram as JLINZ_ENT, and also King_Santiago25. And Taylor and Brill, I'll let you go on ahead and give yours.
Yeah, you can catch me on Instagram, Rosscold4, ROSCOLD, the number 4.
You can just ignore me. Don't even mention me. Yeah. I think you should just cut it. You can catch me on Full Steam Ahead podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a great one.